So please give a round of applause for Sebastiaan.
Yeah, I had a bit of an issue with the type of audience. I didn't know what to expect really, so I made a fairly generic introduction. I'm going to tell you a bit about provisioning here in Sanoma, how we used to do it, how we do it now, and about Terraform and Terraform modules. First of all, well, how did it all start? You guys seem old enough to still have experienced the first way infrastructure provisioning was done. Once upon a time it involved many steps and a lot of waiting. So you would decide upon your architecture, what you want, then you would have to order the hardware, you have to wait for a long time for it to be delivered, then take the car, drive the stuff up to the data center, if you could still access it at the time, set things up, and then discover that you missed the disk that you had to order, and order it, wait again, wait longer, get it all up and running, configure the software components, and go, and then discover what else you missed. So it got better. We got managed hosting, and basically we just had to decide upon the architecture and then call somebody or email somebody saying, hey, I want this and this type of machine, this type of disks, and then decide upon the best data center where to order it, and set up, configure software components, and go, and then discover all the other stuff. So at some point in Sanoma we had several data centers that we wanted to have servers in. So we developed our own tool for provisioning, a self-service tool, which is called Apollo. And there you basically would decide upon the type of server that you would need and the data center where you wanted to have your server, and you would just click the thing together and say go, and you would wait 10 to 15 minutes and wait for the Puppet run to finish, and your server would be up and running, which was excellent. But you still would have to contact the help desk for small DNS changes and stuff. So that was much better, and yeah, it's still up and running, so it serves its purpose. But then the problem with Apollo was that we could have our own instances, but we couldn't do the whole infrastructure around it. So you would still, well, we did something with security groups, so you could say I want these and these security groups on my server, but the ELB stuff, CloudFront, all that stuff, it wasn't in there. So and at the time also Terraform started to have more and more attention. So we decided to change our approach a bit and to go on the flow with infrastructure as code. So basically what we do there is in code we tell what kind of instance we want. Here's a little example. On the left you'll see S3, it's all configurable now. Inside Sanoma it was decided to create an application that would do Ansible provisioning and Terraform provisioning together, and well, they came up with the name Terraform, which I hope a lot of you rings a bell for a lot of you people. And so on the left is the Ansible part, on the right is the Terraform part, and let me see. Hang on. The configuration is basically stored in a Git repository, and it's defined as a YAML file. And I'm just a little bit lost here. Give me a sec. Give me a sec.
Dus was niet bekend hoe erg dat kan bij de kosten.
Terrible kind of configuration to a more terrible kind of configuration. So on the left you will see sort of an example for a terrible YAML file, and on the right you will see what it can translate into if you start using Terraform. And this gets me to the Terraform modules. On the left you will see again the example in Terraform on how to create an instance, but you see duplication of code. For example, in this way, the environment needs to be duplicated because you will have development on one and production on the other, and maybe a different instance type on development than you have on production. So ideally what you want to do is use modules which you can feed with parameters, and which then with which you can then build the code for all environments. I'm skipping through this because I'm running out of time. Module development. We already have modules for basic functionality under development with the dev support team, such as EC2, security groups, ELBs, ALBs, RDSs, and it is possible not only to use these modules but also to start combining different modules in even bigger modules. So you could say, well, I've got the EC2 security groups, maybe some other RDS Terraform module, and you can combine them, for example, in a WordPress package, and you could make a WordPress module which uses these modules to kick off a site easily. Ansible and Terraform, they're all languages we should all be able to speak as developers here, and so they're all languages that we can all start contributing to. There's no more like with Terrible version 1, oh, it's sort of a black box, it's Go, and it requires a lot of stuff to get it up and running. This is something that we can all do together. And what we want to do, in the same way as we have the Ansible modules, is have Terraform modules that we develop together within Sanoma. So here's a little preview of the set that we all have. It's all separate repositories. And how can you contribute? Well, you can then at some point create a fork of one of these repositories, and or add a new repository and work together with your colleagues to make changes or to make additions to these modules, and create a pull request, get a group of people to review your pull request, and then we're going to release a new version of this module. So we'll have versioned modules, version Terraform modules. How to use? You can start, you should pin the Terraform modules that you use. Pinning is winning, I heard from somebody here. But the Sanoma defaults one, in the same way as we have an Ansible common role, you should not pin it, because it has things like, you could have, same defaults and stuff that changes, so don't pin that one. How not to use? Try avoid embedding large chunks of custom Terraform in your code. So don't build all this stuff in your code. Try to turn it into a module. Don't use external modules. Don't use unpinned modules. Don't use your private GitHub account to host it. We want it at Sanoma. Don't make it too complex. And this is an important one, don't duplicate the modules just because you don't like the way it's done. Because it happens with Ansible. I think we have 3 different roles, I think, for the varnish. Let's just try to keep it in one module. Let me see. Terrible 2, It's still under development, but we're starting to test next week. After we finish the closed testing, we'll invite some teams to start testing Terraform version 2 as well. We'll start sharing the Terraform modules, so you can start using those and contribute to it as well. And at some point we'll export your existing Terraform code, and it could then be reworked to Terraform modules. Any questions, comments? I don't believe you.
So, what happens if you create the Terraform code from our Terraform code? Does it automatically get in our source control, or is that going to happen?
Yeah, it will be, I think, in the S3 bucket. Well, and we'll take it from there. Geert-Jan, how will that work? The export of the current Terraform code?
Yeah. So when we convert a Terraform v1 project to a Terraform v2 project, we're going to have a tool that indeed extracts the Terraform code, and it will require some commits to your repository, changing configuration files for Terraform v2. It's a manual process because we also want to review it for each project.